In this lesson, we're going to be talking about what you should know. So this is kind of the prerequisites, the things that you should be at least familiar with before going into all of the detail that's in this course. From an operating systems perspective, it doesn't really much matter what operating system your preferred platform is, whether it's Windows or Linux or Mac OS or maybe something else. The thing is that TCP/IP actually works on a large number of operating systems. We're going to be talking about things that you can actually engage with on pretty much any operating system, certainly the major operating systems like the ones I mentioned just a minute ago, Windows and Linux and Mac OS. The different utilities that we'll be using work under these operating systems. We'll be talking about some networking concepts, and it's helpful to understand just the basics before we get there. Not going to be going into detail about what network interface cards look like, what cabling looks like. We'll be referring to those in kind of a generic sense for the most part. It's helpful to understand what those are and kind of how they work and how they fit together. You don't need to know a great number of details about these things, but just understanding that there's cabling and network interface cards, and that's how your computer connects to the network. And in some cases, you may have a wireless card, understanding that that wireless card uses radio transmissions to connect to the network, and that's how data gets transmitted. Just understanding that at a pretty basic level is going to be helpful as we go through these sets of videos. So we'll be using a number of applications. I'll be walking you through different utilities and programs that we can actually use to get into some detail about the protocols that we're going to be talking about, but having just a basic grasp of applications that use the internet like your web browser or your email client, that's really helpful because at least then you understand how your applications interact with the network and how the network has some impact on the applications that you use. Other than that, though, there's really not an awful lot to know going into this. We're going to be talking about TCP/IP pretty much from the bottom up so you can understand all of the different layers and how they interoperate with one another and all of the protocols that get used for these different applications. For example, how your web browser uses HTTP and the different protocols that HTTP itself relies on. But just having some general sense of what networking is and some of the fundamental concepts of how things get plugged together and connected is really kind of helpful as we move forward.